Hey there, horror fans, and welcome back to another strangely awesome video. It's wild to think that with us being in the middle of the 2020s, horror movies have existed for just over a century. And with it being the season and all, here are our favorites of every decade since the genre started. For the 1920s, we have to go with The Man Who Laughs. The Man Who Laughs is a silent film from 1928, which was an American take on the German Expressionist movement. While it is more of a romantic drama by design, the appearance of its main character and the sense of chaos at play here gives it more of a horror feel. That sadistic grin is still an unforgettably creepy image today, and it is actually what inspired the character of the Joker in the original Batman comics. By the 1930s, sound technology in film had evolved enough to have proper dialogue with sound effects and score. These elements are some of what makes 1931's Dracula so iconic. However, the main praise for this movie just has to go to Bela Lugosi as the titular villain. The performance he gives is just so much fun to watch. He's appropriately theatric, has a gentlemanly air about him, but is also perfectly spooky. It also helps that Dracula is incredibly shot, with incredible use of lighting and framing, which creates some really memorable images of the iconic vampire. The 1940s were obviously a really scary time in real life with World War II raging on, so audiences weren't really clamoring for horror movies. That being said, the decade still has some campy ones that horror fans should check out now. Our pick is The Wolfman. The Wolfman is centered around a man who becomes the titular monster, and the horror here comes from him unwillingly becoming a werewolf. The werewolf itself has a really great design and is just super fun to look at. Like Dracula, this is another black and white horror movie which benefits from some excellent lighting, and parts of the movie have really great spooky, smoky atmosphere. So, for the 1950s, we had to go with something featuring Vincent Price, and our pick is House on Haunted Hill. The movie has a great eerie vibe, which is set up from the very beginning with narration from Vincent Price. The whole thing is a twisted party, where Price's character and his wife Annabelle host an event where people are tasked with surviving 12 hours overnight in a haunted house to win $10,000. There have already been 7 murders in the house before, and tonight, the ghosts are active. House on Haunted Hill has a great gentlemanly villain, and some ghosts which are actually still frightening to see today. The whole thing plays out like a nostalgic murder mystery party, and is a really fun watch for fans who love the vibe of old Hollywood. The middle of the 20th century was a great time for horror, thanks in no small part to the legendary Alfred Hitchcock. In 1960, the director released his best and most iconic film, Psycho. Psycho takes place at the isolated Bates Motel, where the family who owns the place stalks guests. The villains here are downright iconic, with some great mystery around the mother-son duo. Psycho has some of the most memorable kills in horror history, which are still scary today, like the absolutely incredible shower scene. Psycho is a must-watch on its own, but it's also a really fascinating piece of horror history. The movie stars Anthony Perkins, whose son went on to direct Longlegs, and Janet Leigh, the mother of iconic Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis. For the 1970s, you gotta go with the original Alien. While the franchise is now well known with several entries across movies, video games, and more, the original is still the scariest. The film follows an isolated crew aboard a spaceship on a freighting mission. After they investigate an incredible-looking abandoned spaceship, they unknowingly bring aboard a super predator alien who will stop at nothing to eliminate the crew. Alien is a bit of a slow burn, building tension and setting up a really great world with incredible design work from H.R. Giger. However, its third act is absolutely unrelenting, with the iconic chestburster scene dialing up the scares for an action-packed finale where the crew has to fight to survive against the terrifying xenomorph. Now, before we give you our pick for the 1980s, we wanted to remind you that Strangely Awesome is an independently owned small business where we cover movies, TV, and video games. If you want to support us, great news! You already are by watching our videos. However, if you really like what we do and want to go the extra mile, give us a like, subscribe, or become a channel member. It would mean the world to us and help our team out a ton. That being said, our pick for the 1980s is perhaps the scariest film of all time and my personal favorite, The Shining. The movie focuses on a small family of 3 in isolation for several months as the caretakers of the massive Overlook Hotel. The Shining masterfully crafts a frightening atmosphere with a sense of true evil around every corner of this massive hotel. This goes in combination with a terrifying score and obsessive direction from Stanley Kubrick for a horrifying depiction of the insanity that can be awakened in folks with darkness within them. Some could say that Kubrick's obsessive tendencies for this film went too far with methods used on the actors, but you cannot argue with the performances he pulled from every last performer. Jack Nicholson delivers the performance of a lifetime, with one of the best and most unsettling villains of all time. And Shelley Duvall is capable, but rightfully mortified as his wife Wendy. Their son Danny has a unique perspective on the horrors of the Overlook Hotel, as he has this special ability which allows him to see the spirits around him, as well as read people's thoughts. His visions make for some of the most memorable scary shots ever captured on film. The 1990s were the hardest decade to pick just one horror movie to define, but ultimately we had to pick Scream. Scream is the defining slasher. Ghostface is such a memorable villain, and uncovering the mystery of his identity is such a blast. It holds up on repeat viewings as fans begin to look for the clues that they missed along the way. Scream is super referential and meta, with some great humor which lovingly satirizes the genre. Wes Craven had a great career creating horror icons like in A Nightmare on Elm Street, and was able to use that knowledge and experience to craft an incredible whodunit slasher. Scream has some unforgettable kills, a really lovable cast, and a great balance of fun and genuine scares, which has made it an essential sleepover scary movie for nearly 3 decades. So our pick from the 2000s is an underrated gem more people need to see. Stylized as REC, or the abbreviation of record, Record is what we're going to call it to make things easier. So, Record is a Spanish found footage horror movie. It follows a young woman doing a feature video on firefighters in Barcelona overnight. When her and her cameraman accompany the firefighters on an emergency call, they end up quarantined in an apartment building which is host to a zombie outbreak. What makes Record such an incredible movie is that the found footage element genuinely feels real. There's a clear and present danger with these erratic zombies around, and there's such a massive sense of dread being a horror fan and knowing about this type of monster, and yet witnessing these people not making any sense of it all. Record is incredibly tense and has such effective performances and natural realistic camera movements that respond to the environment and action appropriately. These elements end up making Record one of the most believable found footage movies of all time, and the most visceral and terrifying portrayal of a zombie outbreak I've ever seen. In the late 2010s, A24 and directors like Jordan Peele gave birth to what would become known as elevated horror. While there are so many to choose from, Hereditary is still the best. Hereditary follows a family as they uncover a sinister secret about their past once their matriarch passes away. Discovering the truth along with Toni Collette's character is so unnerving, made even more so by the fact that some of the people closest to her don't believe her. Hereditary expertly walks the line between a grounded psychological horror and delivering supernatural scares. There are some truly creative and original, horrific images in this movie which still stick with us even years after its original release. So obviously, the 2020s are still going strong, but our pick for the best horror movie of the decade so far has gotta be Longlegs. Longlegs is a terrifying mix between classic serial killer hunting FBI thrillers like Silence of the Lambs and modern horror with truly sinister supernatural forces. The film centers around a thrilling mystery where FBI agent Lee Harker works to uncover the string of killings by the demonic serial killer Longlegs. Longlegs himself is the most unsettling and unforgettable aspect of the film, with Nicolas Cage giving an incredible performance as a terrifying villain who has become an instant icon of horror. And those are our picks for the best horror movies of every decade. Did you agree with our list? If not, let us know your picks in the comments below. With that, we'll finish up with saying thanks for watching and see you next time.